So anyway, welcome everyone. Good morning. My name is Logan LaPierre. I'm the program manager with the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce here in the Tri-Cities. I want to welcome you to Ask the Experts. As I mentioned a minute ago, feel free to use the Q&A box in Zoom and we will address those as they come in. If you're joining us on Facebook, feel free to throw a comment in and we'll get to that as well. We are covering part 2 with Dee Boyle this morning, and I'm really looking forward to the presentation. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to STCU for their continued partnership. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and throw it over to Dee.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Logan. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you, STCU. It's always exciting to be a part of the Ask the Experts panel. It's one of my favorite events, and it's awesome amongst a crazy year to have more of these of the series and being able to do it on this type of platform. So super stoked to be here. Good morning. I see some familiar names from last week and some new names. So excited to see a mix. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dee, like the letter, the fourth one to be specific. I'm a brand growth strategist with a marketing agency called Brandcraft Marketing. We look at growth marketing. How do we grow somebody from 1 location to 15? If you're a startup, how do we get you to the next round of funding? These sorts of things, big, hairy, scary goals. And a huge part of that is what we're going to talk about today, which is brand positioning and competitive research. One of the most common questions I get asked is where do people usually fail when it comes to sales and marketing? And I would say the 2 most common failures I see are related to brand positioning. All the best marketing and sales in the world cannot fix a product that's not well positioned. And sales process. The best marketing in the world can't fix that you can't close a sale. Today, we're going to talk about the first one. The second one is another, it could be a whole other panel, but we're going to talk about brand positioning and competitor research and how they relate. I'm going to share my screen now. So here's the clunky part. Woo, we did it. Okay. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen fine, but if not, hit me up in the chat here. We'll fix it. So brand positioning. Brand positioning is really about maintaining an edge and making it very clear what your differentiator is. You know, if you've done any light Googling at a minimum in marketing, we talk a lot about differentiators and messaging. And I'm really hoping today I can break down some actionable steps of how to determine what that is. Why I'm glad you're here. Branding is important and brand positioning is a huge part of that. We'll go into some brand positioning 101, but brand positioning is an accountability statement that applies to more than just your sales and marketing. It can apply to your hiring. It can apply to your processes. It's a cornerstone of accountability for a lot of functions of your business, but it's especially important in sales and marketing. Ironically, brand positioning is not something that I expected to be doing when I started my marketing career, but it was something that I learned I had to do in order to be effective with my job and for clients. So I'm glad you're here. You have 7 seconds to make a first impression. So your brand needs to be well designed from the get-go and have a clear message. Brand positioning helps create that clear message through design and through written word. 44% of US consumers give gifts purchased from brands they're loyal to, specifically during the holidays. But in general, brand positioning, which leads to clearer branding, which leads to better brand loyalty, which then creates a larger opportunity when you're looking at the bottom line. 43% of customers spend more money on brands they're loyal to, reinforcing really what we're talking about here. How do we best connect with our most core audience better than all of our competitors? Brand positioning is extremely important, and the way that we approach, or I approach brand positioning, starts with competitive research, which we'll go through. Is really a way to maintain an edge, making sure you're not sounding or saying the same thing everybody else is saying, because then you're just going to be a part of the noise. You can find trends and opportunities when you really pay attention to your positioning and are continually doing competitive research. Maybe you provide a very similar resource or service to others in the market, but you understand a certain audience far better than they do and speak to them. An example of this is we're seeing this a lot like the finance industry. There are whole platforms designed specifically for women who in the past were not spoken to very directly in personal finance and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity to really shorten your time to acquisition with good brand positioning, and also potentially grow not only your lifetime value of a customer, but lower your cost per acquisition because you're being more efficient with the messaging and design for your customer. So brand positioning 101. Let's get into it. What is this big thing I keep talking about? So brand positioning, again, is an accountability statement. Brand positioning is not your mission or vision or values. Those are things you should not talk to me about. You should talk to somebody else about. Brand positioning is really a statement that at the end, at the core, this is our differentiator with our audience. And we really need to push and challenge what that differentiator is. And really think about, okay, my differentiator can't be something that is just the cost of entry for my industry. For example, if I am a grocery store and I say that I have the freshest produce, every grocery store says that. And even if it is not true, that is what every consumer hears about every grocery store, and that is what they expect. Another common one is customer service. Everyone expects good customer service, so you have to push harder. Our goal is to be different, to be focused, and to be relevant. Brand positioning is also something that we want to have longevity. So when we look at brand positioning, sometimes depending on the type of product, you can get really specific into parts of your product. Sometimes it's going to be more about service. You want brand positioning that can really stand the test of time. Successful brand positioning rejects conformity. At its best, positioning elevates the brand above the fray so that people can't help but take notice. The human brain instinctively looks for things that are different and unexpected. So a brand that stands in the stark contrast to its competition will attract people's attention and have a distinct advantage in the marketplace. So when I talk about brand positioning, competitive research is really closely aligned because we have to know what a consumer is hearing from everybody to know if we are different. So a sample brand positioning statement, there's so many ways to write a brand positioning statement. Here is just one framework that we commonly use. But for your audience, and we'll talk more about how to define an audience later, your brand is whatever service you provide is the best that delivers on a promise, because your brand, and only your brand, is, and this is where you put evidence or pillars. Is this the most beautiful statement that you would lead on with your website? Probably not. This statement is not always client-facing, but this is a statement we can always hold accountable to. An example of one, this is Walt Disney's positioning. They're for the young and young at heart. There's their audience. Walt Disney is the theme park, that is their service, that best delivers an immersive and magical experience, their promise, because Walt Disney World and only Walt Disney World connects you to the characters and world you most desire. This leads to their tagline, where dreams come true. So the components: audience, who's your demographic? What are their pain points? Our product, what do you specifically provide? Brand promise, think back to the pain points and how are we solving those? And what can we promise a client or customer to expect whenever they interact with our brand? And then our pillars, or evidence. What are the things that sustain this promise that we can guarantee every time? So there's an overview of brand positioning, which at face value seems pretty straightforward, right? We should know what makes us different. We should know what supports and makes us different. But actually thinking about it and formulating it in a statement of accountability takes a bit of legwork. So I'm going to, I have some slides, but I'm actually going to click out into some windows that I have from other positioning exercises that I've done, and show you kind of some samples of quite literally how I do my job, to kind of show you what goes into determining that. As I go in the wrong direction. So first of all, we need to define our audience. We need to know who we need to speak to. If you're a more established brand, you could possibly have, you probably already know who this is, right? You can look at your past customer base. You can look and see what commonalities you have. You can see who your core customer is. And remember, our goal is not to be a brand for everybody. Not saying that we won't do work with everybody, but when we're talking about investing in branding, we want to invest in who is going to be the most profitable customer for us and the best customer for us. So we want our brand to really speak to the person that is worth investing this much time and money into. If you are in that more startup phase, You might have to learn a bit more about your audience. It's okay to be a bit aspirational. You definitely started this company for a reason and for a person that you had in mind. So if it's aspirational, that's okay too. And don't stop at demographics. I often encourage you to look at psychographics. What are they interested in? What are they passionate about? For example, your product might not necessarily be, you might have products that meet people at different age groups, different belief systems, different value systems. You have a wider market of people, but one thing usually will connect them. They're really interested in eco-friendly products. They're really interested in being a thought leader. Like you can start to see these psychographics or commonalities when you really dive in. I always say create an audience SOP, standard operating procedure. Not really a sexy term, but here's who they are. This is what, if there's demographics, who they are, as age, income, all of that. And then psychographics, this is what they're interested in. This is the places that they'll hang out. Create kind of a profile SOP. And remember, your brand isn't for everyone, and that is okay. That is the point. If you try to be for everyone, you will speak to no one. So when we're talking about this, we want to talk about who am I willing to invest the most time and money in? Who is going to be the best customer for me in terms of lifetime value, in terms of client management, all of these sorts of things. The next step is we want to go into the market like your core customer. This is the most challenging part of the process, and quite often why an agency like Brandcraft will get hired to do this, because to do this, you have to remove all of your bias of what you know about the market. When we all have competitors, we all have insider knowledge about what competitors do or what the experience is like with them based on feedback in the market. Remember, when somebody is shopping or going into a consideration phase in the market, they have none of that insider knowledge for the most part. The only thing that they have to go off of is what they can see in a brand experience before the conversion. So that's going to be what the brand looks like, what the brand sounds like, the experience on their website, the reviews on their social pages and on Google. These are what consumers make decisions off of. So we are going to pretend we're a consumer and do the same thing. Shop the market like your customer would. This means maybe going to Google and searching for your product or service, seeing what ads then come and retarget you on social. We're going to talk more too about how to also kind of see ad tactics for competitors as well in this way. The reason I also say shop the market like your customers would, instead of making a list of all your competitors, going straight to their website and starting to look at how they talk about themselves and differentiate themselves, you might discover that there are competitors you didn't even know you had. When you shop the market like your customer would, you'll go, oh, interesting. When I am looking for, an HVAC company, right? And I go to search for HVAC near me, there's maybe 3 or 4 people that are outranking you or have a higher exposure rate than you do that you wouldn't have considered competitors before for whatever reason, history, or what have you. And the other thing too that's important about shopping the market like your core customer would is you also get to understand the sales journey and experience. Sometimes maybe a great differentiator would just be the level of engagement it takes to get the customer to you, right? For example, a lot of your competitors might not be super adaptive to online channels, right? They have a phone number at the top of their website. They have contact forms, but especially after we've had, that's kind of the bare minimum on a website, right? Maybe there's an opportunity to do more free downloads or to give more content to get people to engage with you at a lower level than your competitors do, giving you a better opportunity to nurture a sale. I usually recommend, depending on the industry, there's a lot of variants, but I always start with search engines when I'm going to shop the market like a customer would, for a few reasons. One, search engines have the highest buyer intent. I think 72% of all Google searches are for somebody looking for a service or an answer, right? So that is where you're going to find the most intent. The other benefit is when you start with search engines, especially people who are advertising, which I'm sure most of your competitors are, they're going to have pixels on their site. They're going to be doing retargeting. Once you start searching in the market like a customer would, you're going to now be flooded with advertisements and other platforms that your consumer would, to see how they talk about themselves and what offerings they have. And then there's competitor audit tools as well. This is, for example, Once you've kind of gone into the market and seen what is out there and understood, you can then use some competitor audit tools as well to see maybe what kind of keywords they are investing in. Are there opportunities or things they're missing, or are there opportunities you're possibly missing from that? One tool is an agency tool that's no secret. It's called SpyFu. You can actually put in some competitor URLs and you can see organic keywords they rank for. You can see if they have any ad spend in certain things like Google. Obviously, this is not 100% accurate, but you can start getting a basis for what they are investing in, and you can then make the determination on if that is worth it or not. The second thing you can do as well is actually go and look at their ads. So this is Brandcraft's Facebook page. And you can see all of my management tools here, but every business page, because of privacy policies, there's a section, if you scroll down right here, called page transparency. And you can actually go and see the ad library. You can see all the ads that anybody is running on Facebook. Facebook owns Instagram. So right now we're running this one on brand positioning. How fitting. Facebook owns Instagram, so you can generally assume that they're running a similar campaign, likely on Instagram as well. These are all things you can do to start getting a more holistic view of what the sales journey is like with your competitor, what they're saying to the customer directly, keywords or intent that they're investing in, and kind of see if that aligns with your core customer or not. The second part, and this is where I think the most important part is, right? We're shopping the market like our customer. We can understand the experience. We can see the ads. We can do some audit tools to see keywords that they are investing in. But I think the larger part of this that is often overlooked is taking note about how they then talk about themselves. Do they have a more aggressive tone, right? Are they talking with a lot of authority? Or maybe they have more of a guide, more of a softer tone? Are they speaking to a specific demographic? Are they really reinforcing their own differentiator in a certain way? I highly recommend actually reading all of the content on their website, reading the content on their ads using the page transparency section, looking at reviews of what other people say about their brand and seeing what patterns you find, because then you'll start to develop like, oh, this brand is really a value brand. They're speaking to a group of people that potentially doesn't want to spend or as much. Maybe they have a lower cost point of entry, which means they're probably needing to drive higher volume. So they might be doing a lot of specials or free consults, or that might be kind of the space they're in. Versus another brand might talk a lot about being a more premium brand. There are brands out there that almost kind of self-qualify their users when they come to their website, and make users kind of really think about whether or not they want to engage because they're at a premium price point. Look at those sorts of things. You can also look at their design language. You can say content and what we say about ourselves is super important, but also the way we present it with the design is important as well. Are we giving a really fun and quirky presentation of our brand? Are we giving a really authoritative, serious, or sleek representation of our brand? And then how does that work with our core audience? You might find, I'll show an example here. We did a positioning exercise for Clearwater Law. They're a law office here in Tri-Cities. If you follow Brandcraft on any social channel, we just did a case study on their rebrand. We did brand positioning. We redesigned their logo. We kind of went through this whole process. They're now in digital marketing, and they've seen a lot of growth because they really committed to it. And they kind of went in and said, as attorneys in the legal space, there's a lot of misconceptions, right? Typically, working with an attorney sounds exhausting to somebody. They're afraid. There's a shame. People really hesitate to go out and find legal services because of all of these barriers and because of the reputation of the industry. And oftentimes, in a space like this, of course, attorneys are very well educated. It is perceived to be expensive, so a lot of people feel that it's inaccessible to them. And Clearwater Law said, we want to take our ego out. We want to seem highly accessible and meet people where they're at, instead of them expecting the experience that they've come to know. So We did competitor research. We saw how people talked about themselves and how others talked about themselves, and came up with a positioning statement about how the Clearwater Law provides Tri-Cities with a premium yet accessible legal services. And then they define how they do that. We do that by offering down-to-earth, tailored communication, a personal, trusted attorney, and accessible barrier to entry. They support this through a certain fee model. They support this through the way that they staff, so that people can come in and get legal services no matter where they are at personally or financially. And they go through to support that in all of their messaging. The slogan is "You own your case," talking about how, you know, the attorney is there to advise you, but you are the hero of your story, and you get to make your decisions, which is kind of a 180 from others. Like, we're the toughest in the game. We're you know, we're great in court. It's a very different message from what a lot of consumers are hearing. And then you can see how that carries on to the site. Our attorneys give you clarity and control. It's all about what we give you to empower you, versus talking about how talented we are as attorneys, and looking at how we did that. Another client too, again, looking at how a more aspirational brand, Sage Investment Group. They are a real estate investment group that are headquartered here in Tri-Cities, but they don't necessarily have direct competition that like a Clearwater Law would. So we look at aspirational brands. What are others saying about themselves? How does their design language look? Sometimes we'll even map it out and kind of give a synopsis of where people land in tone and their branding, and see where the spaces are for us to be. And we go through and determine, again, very similarly, we go through and position them. Sage Investment Group provides accredited investors with a portfolio of real estate holdings that historically outperforms other investment options. We do this by acquiring off-market value-add apartments and repositioning these assets to achieve the highest yield. Diversify with focus. You know, all of the messaging after that reinforces that brand position. So you can see how all of this starts to correlate, and we can really take how people talk about themselves and determine how can we not sound the same, right? Again, if I am a grocery store and I say I have the freshest produce, everyone is saying that. If I say I have the best customer service, that is what everyone is saying, and everyone is expecting customer service. So how do we really differentiate and flip the script? There's a few ways to do this. This is another client of ours that we're working with that is a virtual school, online school, especially with COVID. A lot of new virtual full-time school curriculums opened up, and looking at, okay, how do we, based on how they talk about themselves, based on how their product is set up, you can kind of start seeing groupings of who people talk to, right? An educated fund. This is really just a product that's an extension of electives. This is guilt-free time for parents, for their students. An early education core supplement, a homeschool supplement. You can kind of see how people talk about themselves. And really look at the messaging. A lot of times, especially on about pages, people will literally tell you their positioning and tell you the pillars. And if yours are saying the same exact thing, an audience is probably not going to relate, or it's going to kind of fall flat or feel static. So it takes a lot of time and effort to go through this, but once you do this, it becomes a lot clearer how you are different, because you've heard how everyone has talked about themselves. This is also really great. I know we're talking about marketing, but if you have a sales team as well, this is really great exercise for your sales team to be exposed to learn how to talk about objections and how to really sell and have an elevator pitch that's different than what everyone else is hearing when they're in the consideration phase. And also look at design again, the colors they use, the imagery they use. Maybe their imagery is not showing a lot of people, and that's unique, for better or worse, and you can make that determination. Maybe the imagery that they're using is a lot more graphics-based and simplistic. Maybe the imagery they're using is doesn't really make sense for the product, or and you can kind of start seeing how they talk about themselves outside of their content as well. So when you go through all of this information, you can start seeing these natural patterns and groupings. So after that, you say, okay, we don't want to join the noise. how do we say something everyone else is not? We've now evaluated the competition. We know what people say about themselves. How are we saying something that they're not? How do we support that in our tagline? How do we support that in our elevator pitch? How do we support that in our content? How do we support that in our brand feel and experience? Now we have to say, this is our position statement. We have to support it at every single turn. So with Sage Investment Group, this is their brand positioning, and then we go through a brand guide effort after that, where we usually go through, we write the tagline to support that brand position. We write the brand promise. All of the content in this document, while this is an internal document for the organization, is content that is going to constantly be reused, whether that's on a website or on collateral or these sorts of things. And your brand now starts to become more of a tool and not this big ambiguous thing that I have to rethink every time I develop a new piece of collateral or every time I am, working on a product line. This becomes an efficient tool for your business and not this big, hairy, scary moving target all the time. This is Sage Investments website. You can see the design language, the content and the words that we use really follow through on every page of the site. And I usually recommend this exercise, even at a more pared down scale. This is something that obviously at Brandcraft we do often, and we have a process for it, and you see these beautiful guides. But this is something that if you have the time and the energy, you could easily start doing on your own. Research your competitors, start seeing how they talk about themselves, start writing a document. This is how we should talk about ourselves. These are the words we don't want to say because everyone says that. These are the words we want to say. Here's the tone we use. Here's the real commitment to our brand that we should be using every time we design something. And again, the cool part about this process is then your brand is less this thing you're constantly reevaluating, and it's now a tool that you can easily implement and use, and you can spend more time doing what you should be doing, which is ongoing marketing and sales, not developing assets to support those systems. So all to say, we got to define our audience. What are their main pain points? Really define our product. Sometimes our product is not the literal product as well. Maybe our product is a general solution, right? At Brandcraft, for example, we have a huge suite of services. If I listed everything we do, from design to photography to video to brand positioning to research to blah, 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 people would stop listening immediately. So what we really provide is growth marketing. That in wherever that might take us, we provide growth marketing. A brand promise. What do we promise to deliver every time? And how do we support that? And look at that. And at the end of the day, when it comes to marketing too, targeting tactics, for example, if I am on Facebook or if I am on search, if you joined me last week when we talked about social media advertising, we talked a lot about how targeting tactics have changed and will constantly change, especially with privacy protection policies. Targeting tactics get people to you. You could be killing it in Google ads. You could be killing it on Facebook ads and getting the traffic, but your brand experience is what actually converts. So if you are not investing in brand positioning, which then correlates to how your website looks, it correlates to how your brand looks, it correlates to your sales collateral, and you're investing in marketing dollars, you're likely leaving money on the table. Targeting is going to continue to get more challenging. Privacy policies make it harder for us to target demographically. Users are now having opportunities to opt out of sharing information with advertisers, which is probably good in the long run for all of us. But what you say is going to matter even more, because it used to be a targeting game. When I started digital marketing 5 years ago, which is not that long ago, I could win sales just by having the best targeting because I was reaching people other people weren't. That's no longer enough. Now you're creative, the words you say really, really matters, especially now as we're inundated with more advertising because of this. Invest in your brand. I think it's an upfront investment doing this work on brand positioning and then applying it, but it's an investment in your core audience at the end of the day, and it does impact bottom line. We find that clients, and not just through what we do in brand positioning, but clients who invest in their brand, they're using their brand positioning to train their sales folks. They're using their brand positioning to to influence their sales journey. They're using their brand positioning to make hiring decisions. They then create a better experience for all of their customers, which then becomes a long-term, has a long-term ROI. If tomorrow I had 2 clients that were in a similar industry that had the same budget to spend on ongoing advertising, the one that has better brand positioning is always going to outperform. So this is really an important investment. And the last thing too is you have to commit to not being for everybody, which is the hardest part of this process usually. We have to understand that if we speak to everybody, we will stand for no one. And brand positioning is how do we speak as specifically as we possibly can to our core customer that is going to give us the most engagement and the best ROI. I'm going to check if I have questions real quick before I go too far. Give me a second here. Woo-hoo. Awesome. All right. No questions so far. Either I've lost you or I'm doing very well. Awesome. I'm going to now open up to questions just because I know that we have about 20 minutes or so before we got to close up. Is there any questions? Go ahead and shoot them in the Q&A. I know that Logan is monitoring the Facebook chat for me. So if we have questions, let's dive into them.
I feel like we need a drum roll.
I know, I'm waiting.
Let's see. Well, while we wait for questions, any last minute tips, any best practices you can share that you can think of that,
yeah,
like if you want people to remember like 3 things when they leave the webinar, what would those be?
I would say if you're not doing competitive research regularly, you have no idea how you sound to your customer in comparison to what else they're seeing. 80% of consumers research other brands before they actually make a decision. So if you are not paying attention to what your competitors say about themselves, you have no idea how you stand with your actual customer. The second thing is brand positioning. We talk about it a lot in marketing, but it's something that applies to all of your business. And if it's something that you struggle to identify, you're probably not getting the best ROI on all of your marketing dollars. So investing in competitive research and brand positioning saves you costs on acquisition. It makes time to close shorter. These are really important things to make sure you're efficiently using your marketing budget and your sales time. So those are my biggest things, for sure. You should be doing this work.
All right. Well.
Oh, here we go. Once you identify your target audience customer, how do you best identify where to find and how to reach those prospective customers? That's a great question. So usually what we do is look at audience sizing. Which we talked a bit at my last session. And this is really where most of the time we're looking at digital channels. Traditional media has a bit more information has some information on audience sizing, like radio and TV, but not near as much as digital channels. So we'll go and we'll actually build an audience of our core audience and see how big the audience and opportunity is. When you go into a Facebook ad manager, which also is Instagram, so Instagram and Facebook are both on there, or LinkedIn or Reddit or YouTube, and you build campaigns, they'll tell you how many people you could reach based on that. So we look there and see. So we look at audience sizing and then channel intent. Is the intent of this channel going to receive my advertising well, right? For example, if I am an attorney and somebody is looking for a divorce attorney, they're likely going to go to Google before they go to Facebook. No one's going to search divorce attorney Facebook because no one wants to know they're getting a divorce. So think about the intent of the channel, not just the trend of the channel, and then also look at the audience size. Is there an audience large enough to actually sustain marketing in this channel?
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, it looks like those are all the questions that we had. So with that, I think, I lied. spoke too soon.
have a suggestion where to start researching the changes to the tracking/cookie changes you mentioned? There's a lot of information on this. Literally just a Google search. You'll be overwhelmed with information about it. We have a guide on our blog at Brandcraft that we published about 2 months ago about like iOS 14 update and these changes. The reality is this is going to be a constant moving target. Pixels and cookies and tracking updates are going to be happening a lot more frequently. They have been happening pretty frequently. So it's just a constant moving target to watch, which is another reason to invest in your brand, because if you can't target as specifically as you used to, you have to make sure that you're saying the right thing and investing in the creative that will connect with people the best. But overall, what you'll probably see is short-term loss if you're currently running campaigns with these updates, especially because usually platforms will make an update to adjust to the privacy policy update, and they have to kind of work bugs out too. But if you're really doing well with your audience and knowing who your core audience is and messaging well, it's going to be a short-term loss for you. If you're not investing in that, it will be a long-term loss for you in ROI.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, it looks like that. I'm going to say it again and watch one more is going to pop in there. Thank you, Dee, for being here with us today. Once again, it was a fantastic presentation you gave us. I want to thank everyone for joining us in the webinar this morning. I saw one person joined a little late, so I didn't catch the name, but if you did join late, feel free. This episode or webinar will be uploaded to Facebook sometime in the next 24 hours, so you can feel free to catch up on there. And Dee's episode from last week is also up there to catch up on that. So again, thank you all for being here today, and thank you to STCU. And I hope everyone has a fantastic rest